Hey everyone, welcome back. Happy Friday. I'm Chris, your NFL writer here with Occupy Fantasy, here with another look at wide receivers for the Week 10 action on FanDuel and DraftKings. We're dropping these position preview videos every single week throughout the rest of the season and postseason. So as always, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment below if you have any questions. We'd be happy to talk to you about your favorite wide receivers either in the comment section or on our Discord. There's a link to join our Discord above the description of every video. Be happy to see you in there asking questions about NFL and other sports that are going on at any given time. Where to begin? The wide receiver position. It's the same place we begin most weeks. It's Davante Adams of the Green Bay Packers. Still having an elite season for them. Who's surprised by this, really? 29% of the targets for the Packers of the last 3 weeks, 46% of the air yards. Had a really big game in terms of volume last week with Jordan Love under center, but was not able to be efficient. Hopefully with Aaron Rodgers returning for the Packers, Adams will be much more efficient here in Week 10 against the Seahawks in a game that has a reasonably high total and is actually one of our favorite game stacks of the week here at Occupy Fantasy. The Tampa Bay Buccaneer wide receiver situation is an important one to watch this week. Obviously, Mike Evans is actually standing out as the best option on this slate because Chris Godwin is highly questionable to play. Was unable to practice on Wednesday and Thursday, did return to practice on Friday, but the Bucs are being really careful with him and they're not sure what his status is going to be. He's considered questionable for this game. Even if it is Evans and Godwin, Evans obviously at a lower price this week makes him intriguing for one reason. The other reason being, talked about it in our quarterback video, the Washington football team defense is not great against the quarterback position. They're not great against the wide receiver position either, as you can see here, thanks to the folks over at NFL.com. Washington football team gives up the second most fantasy points per game to wide receivers in the league right now. So obviously Evans, if he is the proverbial last man standing, should Godwin miss this game, will have to soak up the majority of the opportunity for them at wide receiver. A value play that was already a value thanks to Antonio Brown being out, it's Tyler Johnson. He would be the wide receiver 3 for them without Antonio Brown. But without Godwin, he may slide into an even more dynamic role and be maybe one of the best plays on this slate, especially one of the best values on this slate at $3,300 for the Buccaneers. Another player that I'm looking at that has a pretty good opportunity ahead of him is Jarvis Landry with the Cleveland Browns. I think Jarvis is going to see a decent workload here against the Patriots. This is a Browns football team that is really hurting for skill weapons in this game with the loss of basically all their running backs except Dearness Johnson. And you have a guy in Jarvis Landry who's already heavily targeted in the passing game. The loss of Beckham, he's now their most heavily targeted wide receiver on the roster. And he's actually someone that they're unafraid to get involved in creative ways. We've seen a lot of trick plays involving Jarvis Landry under Kevin Stefanski the last couple of years. They are interested in potentially using him in the running game a little bit when they need to. And this may be one of the weeks where they need to get him some touches to spell their starting running back a little bit this week. So Landry may be a player they use pretty creatively. Cole Beasley, pretty similar, exact same price as Landry on both FanDuel and DraftKings. $5,200 on DraftKings, $6,100 on FanDuel. Being used to sort of recreate the running game for Buffalo. They're struggling to get either Zach Moss or Devin Singletary going for whatever reason. So they're using their slot route specialist in Cole Beasley to really take advantage of those short yardage situations. He's going to be an interesting play this week as a result. Other than those 5 guys, we obviously have a pretty extensive underperforming wide receiver list, and that's a list that y'all like to see. We're happy to share it with you. We have a pretty good list this week, headlined by star Dallas Cowboy wide receiver CeeDee Lamb. Lamb has 20% of the targets from Dak Prescott, 32% of the air yards over Dallas's last 3 weeks of play, and still underperforming his opportunity. Underperforming by about 20 expected fantasy points according to our metrics here at Occupy. Again, we look at targets received, air yards on those targets, how efficient the player has been with those opportunities, compare their production to their expected production, and that's how we arrive at our underperforming wide receiver list. After Lamb, probably not surprised to see last week's number 1 wide receiver still on here, Emmanuel Sanders. The Bills were unable to score any touchdowns against the Jaguars in Week 9. Here in Week 10, they're playing the Jets. Hopefully, we'll see them turn things around in what is kind of a must-win game for them to reassert their dominance in the AFC East and the AFC in general. Sanders with 14% of the targets from Josh Allen, but a really strong 42% of the air yards of the last 3 weeks. That's because his average depth of target is basically 20 yards. So on every single pass, he's basically 20 yards downfield. That's really high value opportunities in this offense. Bet on Sanders to convert some of those here in Week 10. We like that a lot this week. Should have had at least 2 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks, according to some of the things we look at. So extremely underperforming. Zach Pascal with the Indianapolis Colts, getting into the more affordable bunch of guys here on our underperforming wide receiver list. 4,500 on DraftKings, 5,600 on FanDuel. 19% of team targets in the last 3 weeks, right around 28% of the air yards. Should have had at least one touchdown in the last 3 weeks, and he doesn't have one to his name. So that's obviously something that we like to look at. He's heavily involved in the red zone passing game for the Colts as well. The caveat here with the Colts is they are getting T.Y. Hilton back. So another player back at the wide receiver position will muddy the waters a little bit for the Colts, but still like Pascal's chance to overperform or I guess regress back to what he should have been doing all along over the last 3 weeks. Talked about Jarvis Landry already. We have an opportunity to actually skinny stack, or if you feel like it, game stack this game between the Patriots and the Browns, because Jacoby Myers is also on our list. You see him on here. 4,800 on DraftKings, 5,500 on FanDuel. Other than Robbie Anderson, who thankfully is not on our list this week, he's basically the perennial underperformer because he's never scored a touchdown in the NFL, despite being a primary wide receiver for a pro football team for over a year now. 20% of the targets for Mac Jones, 25% of the air yards in the last 3 weeks of play. Myers is in a good spot here against the Browns defense. We like him a lot. Kyle Pitts, he's a tight end in fantasy football, but as far as how he's being used by his team, over 79% of his routes that he runs for the Atlanta Falcons come from either slot or out wide positions. Thanks to our friends at Pro Football Focus for that. So this is really dynamic for a tight end. It's kind of unheard of at a really high 14.9 yard average depth of target. So his routes are pretty high value as well. Should have had at least one touchdown over the last 3 weeks. He does not have one. Has not scored a touchdown on American soil just yet, to be honest with you. Only touchdown in that London game. 20% of the targets from Matt Ryan. 38% of the air yards over the last 3 weeks for Kyle Pitts. He's a really good play here. In a game stack that we like a lot, opportunity to stack him with CeeDee Lamb, our top underperforming wide receiver, in that Falcons and Cowboys game in Week 10. Terry McLaurin at the bottom of our list here is a holdover from Week 9. The football team was on bye last week, and now he'll face the Buccaneers in what's a really interesting game. Leads the football team with 22% of the targets, 45% of the air yards of the last 3 weeks of play. Does have a touchdown in that sample, but still underperforming even with that touchdown. So that's how you know Terry's a really strong play. In the rare opportunity where he's actually more expensive on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel, so you may actually see Terry be more popular on the FanDuel side of things here in Week 10. 7,600 on DraftKings, 7,100 on FanDuel. So those are my favorite wide receivers this week. Obviously, the guys I'm looking at for all lineup types, low risk especially, talked about them off the top. And then the underperformers, our favorite plays for tournament lineups. Some of these guys should be lower owned, have good opportunity based off of their usage recently, haven't met those expectations. We think they have a chance to do so as a result here in Week 10. Some other guys haven't discussed: Christian Kirk and A.J. Green. The Arizona Cardinals are obviously one of the better football teams in the league, so we do like their opportunity quite a bit here. Now, we got to keep an eye on this because if Kyler Murray can't play, Colt McCoy will be under center once again. Colt McCoy had an average depth of target on his throws of like 3 yards, which is the lowest for a starting quarterback that has thrown, or for any quarterback that has thrown more than like 5 passes this year. It's under Kyler Murray's average depth of target by about 5 yards. So the ceiling of this passing game seems like it's capped, to be honest with you, without Kyler Murray under center. Murray did return to practice on Friday. So if we get a situation where Murray starts, but we have, Kirk and A.J. Green as the top options, maybe revisit this on Saturday evening, Sunday morning, and say one of these guys is one of the better plays on the slate without Hopkins, without Rondale Moore. That would be sort of very interesting as well. Obviously, with Devontae Adams as the number one play at the position, have to take a closer look at guys like Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. I do like this as a game stack, the Packers and the Seahawks this week. So obviously we like the Seahawks' primary passing weapons with Russell Wilson returning to the field. And then the other game stack that's going to be popular this week that I haven't talked about too much in this wide receiver video, the Vikings and the Chargers. Justin Jefferson with the Vikings, Keenan Allen with the Chargers. The best options in that game to use in your game stack lineups this week at the wide receiver position. That is going to do it for this video. Did I answer all your questions? If you have any questions about wide receivers, please leave one in the comments section below. Keep an eye out for the daily plug at OccupyFantasy.com. It should be up by 8 p.m. Eastern time here on Friday. We'll go over not just our favorite expensive and value wide receivers in there, but also our favorite quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends, favorite contests to play, and most importantly, how to deploy our favorite players in the type of contests you are playing. So whether that's low risk contests or high risk contests, we give you some of the back tested tips that we've looked at that set you up to have the most success in those contests. Most important part of the plug, you're not going to want to miss that. Once again, for Occupy, I am Chris. Thank you for watching this video, folks, and we'll talk to you soon.